Hello, I'm John Rossi, a touring drummer with a love of all things animal. When I'm on the road, I visit as many zoos, aquariums... Hey, wait a minute. What's going on? Hey, what's going on there? Hello? 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 We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you Rossifari Zoo news. News you can use from the world of zoos and conservation. Every week, we bring you breaking news and analysis from around the globe, featuring the animals you love and the people who care for them. And here's your anchorman, John Rossi.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Rossifari Zoo News, your look at everything going on in the world of zoos, aquariums, conservation, and general animal weirdness. I'm your host, John Rossi, and I'm excited to have you all along here for the ride. So for those of you who don't know, Zoo News is a crowdsourced zoo news program. So if you happen to see any zoo news-worthy stories, you can send them to me, rossifaripod@gmail.com. Or tag me in them at Rossifari on the socials, at RossifariPod on TikTok, and I'll say your name in the end of the episode, whether I use your story or not. So good times all around. And speaking of good times, holy cow, y'all, I have been on a trip. So I mentioned at some point last week that I was going to be doing some performances of the show that I wrote, Sun Records Live, also known as Under the Sun, in North Carolina and Ocean City, Maryland. And I'm actually recording this after our show in Ocean City, Maryland. I wrote it and kind of scripted it out beforehand while sitting staring at the ocean that is part of the whole Ocean City name thing. And as soon as I'm done recording this, I'm going to go and hop in the hot tub bath that I have in my suite that the venue booked us. We all have our own 4-room suite here, and it is, well, sweet. I apologize, but it is true. And so I am looking forward to taking advantage of that when I am done blathering on to y'all. But along with the shows, which have gone absolutely amazingly well, it's been quite a joy, I also spent some time at the Greensboro Science Center, not actually for the podcast, but just for John time. And it was a blast, and I enjoyed catching up with all of my friends at the Science Center. And then also, for the podcast, went and visited the Metro Richmond Zoo and the Virginia Zoo, 2 new facilities that are added to the pod list, and those episodes will be out soon. And, y'all, what a freaking journey I had. It was such a good time. Both facilities had such amazing animals, and the interviews were great, and the people were super welcoming, and, yeah, it's just been a really, really good time. So, as a matter of fact, Jay Meredith, who is a photographer that you've seen me post about a lot, and I will continue to, actually joined me at Metro Richmond Zoo as we were trying to get a bit of a collaboration going. And so they have some snow leopard cubs there. And we thought it would be good to maybe do an interview for the podcast that included talking about those and also have him come along and photograph them. And he did, and I did, and we did, and it was great, and it was a lot of fun, and really cool to finally hang out with somebody who's become a very good friend on the online, but who, we hadn't actually met in person until this trip, so that was a lot of fun. And I'm actually not done yet sharing about personal life stuff. This has been a big week, y'all. I have an announcement that I'm really proud of and really excited about. So most of you know probably that I am now the co-leader of the Public Engagement Working Group for the Safe Red Panda program. And honestly, it's just inspired me to want to keep building my presence in the conservation world, which is why I am proud to announce that I am now also a member of the Public Engagement Working Group of the Safe Tree Kangaroos of Papua New Guinea program. So I'm actually involved in conservation efforts with red pandas and tree kangaroos now, and I'm very newly involved. I had a meeting earlier this week and started to get involved in a couple of ways there. So I don't really know what that involvement is going to look like 100% yet, but yeah, tree kangaroos. Ugh, I'm so excited, y'all. I'm so excited. My heart is so full, and it's really cool. And that's still not all. I have one other thing that I need to share, and this is technically zoo newsy because it involves a zoo. But I'm sure most of you listened to my AZA recap episode. And if so, the first group of people that you heard were from the Valley Zoo Development Society that works with the Edmonton Valley Zoo. And as you heard on that episode, those people just became my little family at the conference. I loved the time I spent with them so much. And you are going to hear an episode from the zoo in a couple weeks here. But, the team from the Valley Zoo Development Society really, really touched my heart and became good friends. And I have stayed in touch with a lot of those people since the conference. And they're just amazing. Y'all could hear what that relationship was. And when we were parting ways at the end of the conference, Kelly, one of the members of the team, mentioned to me that she had gotten permission to send me something. Now, I will tell you, I have, zoos and other places and people send me things from time to time. I've gotten lots of shirts and some jewelry and some stuffies and some cool stuff. And I'm always wildly appreciative. So when Kelly said that, I was obviously very excited and very appreciative. But y'all, the package they sent me blew my mind. There was a beautiful card that apparently took many rewrites before they got right. And then there was some facts about their red pandas and like a fact sheet, and also an adoption package for symbolically adopting the 2 red panda cubs they have at the zoo right now. So that meant the world to me. And obviously being a symbolic adoptive parent of red panda cubs is just amazing. But the main thing that was in this package was a piece of luggage. And y'all, I will put pictures of all of this up on Instagram, but it is a red panda suitcase. And the red panda is like carved into the suitcase. I'm not good at describing these types of things, but it is honestly one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen. And as a person who travels all the time, it is going to get used constantly. It is the most John Rossi thing I think I've ever been sent. And so I just want to take a moment here to say thank you to everyone at the Valley Zoo Development Society and the Edmonton Valley Zoo for being amazing humans and for sending me such an amazing thing. If y'all don't follow them, you should. I'm going to post lots of pictures and links and all the things. This is a really cool, really unique zoo in Canada that I am expecting great things from, because the people there are so next level. And I'm really excited to see what the future of this zoo is. So thank you all, everyone at the zoo. I love you all so much. And I'm going to basically never use any other luggage ever again. So thank you. And with all of that said, it is time to get to some zoo news. All right, so for the second week in a row, the headline story of Zoo News is about a hurricane. This week, it's Hurricane Milton, which blew up into a Category 5 storm before hitting land in Florida, where it dropped back to a Category 3, which is still a very, very strong storm. And due to my gigging schedule this week, I'm writing this kind of early, so I don't actually have much to report on the effects of the storm, as it is currently ravaging Florida as I write this. So that said, the Florida zoos and aquariums that are in the path of the storm are very used to hurricanes and know how to best ride out the storms. And while many of the staff members will evacuate the area, some literally do stay on what are called ride-out teams, where they will literally live in the safest, most protected places in their zoos and aquariums, taking care of the animals if and when it's safe, and hoping the generators at the facility can keep them, given electricity and hopefully everything, they're sheltered and stuff. Each and every one of these people is a hero. And of course, even many of the staff members that aren't riding the storm out at their facilities have had a stressful few days as they prep their animals for the storms. And keep in mind, this is all while also having family and friends they have to help prepare as well, or even knowing they have to do the work before they evacuate or whatever. It's a lot. So while the facilities in the area are built with hurricanes in mind, there are still these steps that need to be taken. For instance, the Florida Aquarium has to move its penguins from the first floor to the second floor, which is much more secure and which is higher than the first floor, obviously, making it a much safer option if the flooding the aquarium is anticipating actually does happen. In some cases, animals actually end up moving to different facilities. For instance, the coral that call the Florida Aquarium home have all been packed up and moved to a variety of locations that are safer than Tampa right now, including facilities in Miami, Georgia, and West Palm Beach. Many of the facilities, including Zoo Tampa, announced days of closure before the storm to accommodate all the work needed to prepare for the storm, meaning that many of these facilities are losing a week or more of attendance money, along with all of, the eventual repair costs. The Naples Zoo actually put together a video showing areas of the zoo that are now empty and showing things like cranes living in bathrooms temporarily, many animals in indoor holding spaces where they will ride out the storm, and their alligators their alligators were just in the alligator pool. As you may remember from my episode with Vittoria, the gators are so well adapted to stay outside, even in hurricanes, that they just do that, and they are always fine. It's actually quite astonishing. Now, to be fair, I wasn't 100% sure if that was the case with this storm, and I did text Vittoria, and she said everyone at the zoo is fine. So it sounds like things worked out okay again, and I just can't believe that alligators can do that. But yeah, it's pretty cool. So I don't really want to say a ton more about the storm right now because, as I mentioned, as I'm writing this, I don't really know what is going to happen with it. But I do want to send all the love and support to the keepers and vets and other staff that had to work their butts off to prep the facilities for the storm. And I'm guessing my headline next week will probably be me talking in greater detail about the effects of Milton. Hopefully not. Hopefully it's all relatively positive news and it can just be a quick little nod. But yeah, rough time for hurricanes. And that brings us to our births for the week. The Santa Fe College Teaching Zoo has announced the birth of a tree kangaroo, Joey. The little one is starting to peek out of Mom Adelaide's pouch already, and I am so excited. The whole family is doing quite well, and I really can't wait to see more pictures and videos of the little one at the zoo. So that makes Zoo Miami, the Bronx Zoo, and the Santa Fe College Teaching Zoo as the places with tree kangaroo Joeys this year. And there may be more to come. Our friends at Buttonwood Park Zoo have introduced the world to Queso, a baby emperor tamarin born to Mom Pepper and Dad Jack. Get it? Pepper, Jack, and Queso? You can already see Queso living it up on exhibit while riding on Mom's back, something he'll do for the first month and a half or so of his life. And the Yorkshire Wildlife Park in the UK has announced the birth of a litter of 4 bush dog pups. The parents are Belle and Gaston, which might have some Disney fans up in arms, or might just be the fodder for a very new, very dark sequel to Beauty and the Beast.
All right, we'll be back after this quick break.
Did you see the Colombian government is spending almost $4 million to relocate Pablo Escobar's hippos?
In Brazil, a school of piranha attacked and injured at least 8 people at a beach resort.
First fatal mountain lion attack in 20 years in California.
Hey, it's me, Forrest Galante, wildlife biologist. You may have seen me on Joe Rogan's podcast or my various TV shows like Extinct or Alive or Shark Week. So join me and my friends as we break down animal news from around the world and discuss all things wildlife. Click here to unlock these animal mysteries.
The pups are starting to explore their habitat and to bond with the rest of the pack at the zoo. So if you're in the UK, you can go and see them now. And that brings us to our deaths for the week. Starting with Zahara, a baby giraffe at the Abilene Zoo that has passed away after suffering a leg fracture. She was born in July and had a normal and healthy life at the zoo until this accident occurred. Now, unfortunately, the zoo is unsure exactly what happened, but as soon as they found her with her broken leg, they started emergency care, but it was too late and Zahara passed away. Now, losing an animal is always hard, and losing a baby is even harder. And, losing an animal without knowing what happened is the hardest yet. So I am sending all the love to the team at the Abilene Zoo. The Virginia Zoo has announced the passing of both their Watusi cattle, Kamau and Gamba. Both of the cattle suffered from a genetic defect that led their huge horns to grow in a horizontal direction rather than vertical, which caused an untreatable head tilt, which led to physical impacts and long-term health issues. These issues reached the point where their quality of life started to decline rapidly, so the decision was made to humanely euthanize them. And weirdly enough, that is not the only double euthanasia we have this week. The Adelaide Zoo in Australia has also announced a double euthanasia. In this case, their African lion pair, Amani and Mujambi. Mujambi, the male, was 19 years old, and he suffered a medical incident last week that would have been impossible to recover fully from. Given that his quality of life would have been less than ideal, the decision was made to euthanize him. And this left the facility with an interesting predicament, as lions are social creatures, but the idea of trying to integrate 23-year-old Amani into another pride was considered too risky and stress-provoking, so the zoo actually decided to euthanize her as well. Now, at the time of her passing, Amani was the oldest lioness in Australia, and her and Mujambi were very closely bonded. And I'm sure that at least some of you listening to this are a little thrown by the idea of euthanizing an otherwise healthy animal in this situation. But I think this goes back to what I've been talking about a good bit in recent episodes. European, and in this case Australian, zoos have a different take on quality of life than zoos in the Americas tend to. And I do have to say that to me, this one, it does make sense. I do often wonder when I hear about one remaining older social animal at a facility, what's going on. But in those cases, I do also trust that the keepers who are there every day taking care of the animals, they know what's best. Still, I do think this is a great example of how welfare can look different to different people or different cultures. And I think the zoo made their decision with Amani's welfare at heart. So yeah, very interesting decision and very challenging for keepers to lose two animals at the same time at both of these facilities. So sending all the love. Zizi, the queen of the Big Cat Sanctuary in the UK, has also passed away. Now, this Amur leopard was 19 years old and was the first of her species to call the Big Cat Sanctuary home. Her name was actually short for xylophone, which means xylophone, because of the beautiful vocalizations she made as a cub. She lived most of her life at the sanctuary, where she became a mother and grandmother. Unfortunately, as often happens with Amur leopards, her kidneys gave out and the decision was made to euthanize. The staff is devastated and her presence will be greatly missed. And last but not least this week, a white tiger named Ben has passed away at West Midlands Safari Park. He was born at the park and lived his entire life there and was only days away from his 20th birthday. Not only did the staff of the facility love Ben, but he was so popular amongst zoo guests that donations and other tributes started pouring in upon the announcement of his death, which is actually amazing. And the safari park actually noted that this outpouring of love really did help with the grief the staff was facing. That's just amazing. What an awesome animal Ben must have been to have such an incredible impact. Just so cool. And then moving on from births and deaths, we get to the rest of our zoo news section. And so our headline story was about Hurricane Milton, but we can't forget that zoos and aquariums are still recovering from the effects of Hurricane Helene, especially the WNC Nature Center, which was damaged very badly by the storm, and because of road damage and bridge damage, has no date for reopening planned at this time. Now, the good news, along with the fact that all the staff and animals escaped unscathed, is that rebuilding is underway. And it just so happens that our friends at the North Carolina Zoo are helping with the process. Arborists and welders and other specialists made their way to the facility to help out, which is the kind of connection I love seeing between zoos, especially two facilities as wonderful as the North Carolina Zoo and the WNC Nature Center. Also, I wanted to point out that I was really impressed by a statement released by the executive director of the zoo, Chris Gentile. He told people that while the facility has multiple financial needs, the community should prioritize donating to families in need, saying that getting the communities back on their feet needs to be the goal, and that since the communities in the area all love the animals at the zoo, he hopes that letting everyone know they're doing well will help lift morale until things get back to normal. What an awesome and selfless take. Now, this next story is an absolute heartbreaker. Dozens of tigers have died in zoos in South Vietnam after a bird flu outbreak amongst the cats. Experts believe the cats fell ill after being fed chicken that had been infected with H5N1 avian influenza. The government is tracking the source of the chicken to try to prevent this happening with any other animals or, humans, but literally dozens of these incredible cats are now gone because of this incident. A terrifying reminder that avian influenza is still quite a thing that we need to deal with in this world. On a much lighter topic, we have another zoo parade float to discuss. The San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance has officially debuted the artwork for its 2025 Rose Bowl Parade float. Not surprisingly, the float features the two new giant pandas that call the zoo home. But that's not all. It also features a tiger and, most importantly, two red pandas. I love that the reds got to be on the float that was obviously going to feature giant pandas this year. And I'm really excited to see the actual float. Red pandas, y'all. Seneca Park Zoo is celebrating the 31st birthday of Pimento, one of the olive baboons that call the zoo home. Pimento is the oldest olive baboon in the entire North American population, a testament to the amazing care she receives at the facility. Our friends at Mote Marine Lab, which I'm currently hoping still exists after a second hurricane is hitting basically right where it sits in the last 2 weeks, has announced the discovery of a new hammerhead shark species in collaboration with Florida International University. The shark has the scientific name of Sphyrna alleni and is named after the philanthropist and co-founder of Microsoft, Paul G. Allen. Zoo Atlanta has officially started the farewell party for their panda bears. And while an exact travel date has not been announced and won't be announced for security reasons, the zoo recommended getting out by the middle of October to make sure you have a chance to say goodbye to the bears. And fans have responded in droves. People from all around the country have been traveling to Zoo Atlanta, where the lines are long, but the bears are worth the wait. Special merch is available, and the Panda Party has been ongoing for a while now. I've had listeners from all around the country reach out to tell me they made the trip recently, and honestly, I would probably make it myself if not for the fact that I'm already traveling around like a crazy person. And while we don't know exactly when the bears will be leaving, we do know it will be soon, and that they will leave behind an incredible legacy of love and education at the zoo. The Rosamond Gifford Zoo has been selected as the new home for Dodge, an Argali sheep that was the subject of a federal trial recently. Argali sheep are an incredibly rare species, and in fact, Dodge is the only one that is housed in the United States, to my knowledge. There is one other Argali sheep in the Western world. It lives at Tierpark, Berlin, which is a large safari park in Europe. So if you want the chance to see a truly unique species, Rosamond Gifford Zoo in Syracuse is the place to do it. And then last but not least in zoo news, Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute has yet again blown my mind. They recently discovered that their 11-month-old cheetah cub, Freya, had a malformation in her spine that was causing her vertebrae to twist into a C shape. Without treatment, this would have led to mobility issues for the cat, but the zoo combined their keeper teams and veterinary teams, along with a sports medicine veterinary practice and a veterinary neurosurgeon, to conduct a spinal surgery to correct the issue. But since they weren't exactly sure what caused the issue or exactly what the problem was, how could they know, if the surgery they were doing was the right thing? Well, they took all of the scans they could of the area, and then they created a 3D printed version of Freya's spinal column. This allowed the team to truly analyze and know exactly what they needed to do before they even made their first incision. And while it is too early to say for sure that Freya will fully recover, all of the early indications are that everything went perfectly, and this little girl will have a long and full life. And, by spending time with the 3D model before going into the surgery, the team was not only able to come up with a plan, but also to minimize the amount of time Freya was under anesthesia, keeping this incredible surgery to just under 2 hours total. An absolutely incredible story.
Stereotypical animal podcast theme song. Here to bring you to conservation news.
All right, so I was torn about where to put this story because it does involve zoos, but ultimately I think it fits better here, so I'm putting it here. And if you don't like it, too bad. It's my podcast. We're actually going to do a deep dive here into the tiger population in the United States, because a couple stories have come out recently about this population that I find interesting. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about the wild American tiger, as there is no such thing, but I'm also not talking about the tigers that live in accredited facilities of which we track the genetics and such. I'm talking about tigers owned in private collections or housed in roadside zoos, where I am firmly placing quotation marks around the word zoo. So for years now, that population of tigers has been estimated to be around 7,000 individuals, which is more tigers than remain in the wild, and far more than can be found in accredited facilities in the U.S. In fact, depending on the source, that number is actually estimated to be as high as 15,000 tigers or as low as 3,500 tigers, which is obviously a huge discrepancy. And the same people who claim the number is at the higher end also claim that an additional 5,000 to 10,000 other big cats are housed in the U.S. in those same types of situations, for a population of over 20,000 big cats in the United States under those conditions, right? Roadside zoos, private ownership. And this is a number that is actually parroted a lot by anti-zoo activist groups, organizations like PETA, stuff like that. But a new study shows that this number is actually highly unlikely to be true, and in fact seems to have been completely made up for the sake of being a big, round, scary number. As a matter of fact, that number, 20,000, was used by many people who helped push through the Big Cat Safety Act, which is something supported by groups as varied as the organization run by Carol Baskin, PETA, and the AZA. So recent population studies now have come up with a very different number. There are apparently approximately 100 big cats that have been registered in the United States by private owners, with an estimated population of around 1,800 in unaccredited zoos and traveling exhibitions, and then an additional 1,360 found in accredited facilities, meaning that the total big cat population in the U.S., again, including accredited facilities, seems to be around 3,200 total. And as far as the original number we looked at, claiming that there were probably 7,000, but maybe as high as 15,000 tigers living in roadside zoos and in private care, well, if there are the 3,200 big cats total, and not all of those are tigers, yeah, you get the idea. So it seems like this myth of an insane number of tigers in the U.S. is just that, a myth, though one that helped to ram through the Big Cat Safety Act, which gets into a philosophical question about means and ends, I suppose. And it actually appears that the number of roadside facilities housing tigers has dropped recently from over 500 to 302 in the U.S., which is both still like way too many, but also a really great trend. It seems like the whole Tiger King thing, for all of its glorification of a side of this industry that should not be glorified and should not actually exist, did actually bring awareness of the problems around cub petting and all that stuff. And that, coupled with the Big Cat Safety Act, has led to a decline in that gross roadside zoo industry. So yay that. But we're actually not done with tigers in the U.S. yet, because another study recently did some genetic testing on tigers held in roadside zoos and private collections to try to determine if this population of tigers could be used to help the 6 subspecies of tigers in the wild when it comes to rebuilding their population. And sadly, though not surprisingly, it appears as though the tigers that live in these conditions are, by and large, genetically impure. There was no consideration made about the subspecies of tigers that were bred to create these particular animals, and the genetics are an absolute hodgepodge. And as such, none could be used for reintroduction programs, nor is any of the genetic material from these tigers valuable in the way we currently do conservation work, where the preservation of each subspecies is the goal, especially with tigers, where each subspecies is adapted for life in its own way and to its own habitat. So that's a bummer overall, but there is one caveat to what I just said, something that is interesting and may eventually lead these cats to be able to help their wild counterparts. See, when it comes to saving a species, preserving genetics kind of goes out the window at some point. For instance, in the late 1990s, the population of Florida panthers dipped all the way to somewhere between 20 and 30 individuals, and they were becoming severely inbred. So state wildlife officials brought in 8 wild Texas panthers, despite them being a different subspecies, and the plan worked, with the population blooming to over 100 individuals by 2007, with far fewer issues from inbreeding. So, should the option become the extinction of the entire tiger species, or using genetic material that means the subspecies lose their purity, then the genetic material in these privately owned tigers could be enough to save the tiger species as a whole. But hopefully, our other conservation efforts make it so that that never needs to be the case. And then got some other conservation news for y'all. A species known as the Moyatoro robber frog has been rediscovered by an expedition in Ecuador after being lost to science for 102 years. Yep, the last one of these frogs was seen in 1922, which is before television was invented. This rediscovery has led conservationists to start work on creating a 2,100-acre private reserve that will help to keep the dwindling forests in this area of Ecuador both safe and, most importantly, connected, as habitat fragmentation is a major issue facing these frogs and all the other life in the area, much of which only lives in this area. So this is a big win for a lot of species. So this next story is one of those that has me both intrigued and maybe a little concerned and also just kind of confused. An organization in Florida known as Noah's Ark Sanctuary has come up with a creative way to raise money to help build enclosures and care for local injured and orphaned wildlife and to share conservation messaging. They are opening a cafe. Specifically, a Capybara Cafe, which will be opening in St. Augustine, Florida. But this isn't just a cute name for a cafe. It's a cafe that will literally have capybaras at that you can learn about and interact with. Now, cappies are amazing animals to interact with, but the word interact is always a little scary to me when it's not at an accredited zoological institution. So here's hoping that this is a good experience and not one that, ends up back on Zoo News for the wrong reasons. Also, the idea of a caffeinated cappy is kind of scary, but I'm guessing that's not where they're going with it. Anyway. And then finally, in conservation news this week, a new moth species has been discovered in a way that is so improbable it's laughable. An ecologist named Daisy Cadet lives in Wales and traveled to Guyana in South America and back, a journey of 4,500 miles each way. A few months after Daisy arrived back home, she found 2 moths sitting on her windowsill that didn't quite seem like they belonged there. So she shared pictures of them online. Experts from the Natural History Museum reached out, collected the moths, and ran genetic testing, at which point they discovered this was an entirely new moth species. The belief is that the 2 crawled into Daisy's bag in Guyana as larvae and made the trip back with her, then metamorphosed into their moth form, and then were discovered. What an incredible way to discover a new species. Just a casual 4,500 miles from, where it lives. Amazing. In other news, Flacco the Owl continues to inspire the New York City Council to pass bills in his honor. The latest one is a bill that will put rats on birth control. A local rat contraceptive pilot program will begin in a small part of New York City using a contraceptive that works on both male and female rats and that is approved by the EPA. The goal is to eventually expand the program in the hopes of shrinking the rat population in New York to the point that rodenticide doesn't become as prevalent in the city, hopefully saving many birds from death like Flacco faced. The New York State Department of Environmental Conservation routinely does necropsies on hawks and other raptors that are found dead in the city, and they find the leading cause of death is rat poison, with roughly 80% of the birds dying from that. So hopefully the birth control will help stem the death of raptors, which will in turn actually increase the number of rats killed by the birds every year, which will further help control the rat problem in the city. And then our last story this week, comb jellies are super strange animals, and scientists have recently learned they are even weirder than we already knew. Now, we already knew that comb jellies can heal and even regenerate parts of their bodies at rapid rates. But it turns out that a comb jelly can also attach a body part of another injured comb jelly and integrate it near seamlessly into its own body. The new animal is literally one very large comb jelly with lots of duplicate parts, but sharing the part or the parts that was injured in one of the comb jellies. So they just kind of absorb their injured comrades and then go at life together. What a weird little species.
Oh, animal, animal holidays. Animal, animal holidays. Hey!
It is October, which is Croctober, Tamarin Month, Bat Appreciation Month, Squirrel Awareness Month, and Adopt a Shelter Dog Month. Then for our individual days, the 12th is African Penguin Awareness Day and World Migratory Bird Day, which frankly seems a little mean to the penguins, which can't, migrate because of the whole not flying thing. Then the 13th starts World Rainforest Week, Small Wildcat Week, and Earth Science Week, which all run through the 19th. The 16th is National Fossil Day, and the 17th is both International Sawfish Day and Hickory Turtle Day. And those are your animal holidays for the week. All right, so there you have it, folks. Another week of Rossifari Zoo news is in the books. There's no books. It's in your ears. Some of it's probably even still in your brain. Anyway, I'd like to take a moment to say thank you to all of my Red Panda level patrons, including Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, and Kevin Williams. I'd also like to thank everyone who contributed stories this week, including Anya Keene, Colleen Linehan, Kim Cooley-Croninger, Carrie Kirkpatrick, Kevin Williams, Emily Rockbuck, Christina Powers, Tiana, not Tiana, Tiana Bush. See, I can get it right eventually. Ha ha. Jesse Nicole, Chris Gross, Dylan Hoy, Natalie McGee, Ann Yoshioka, Matt Patford, Ali Malensky, Kay Malensky,
The Malenskys.
Dr. Zoe Rossi, Dr. Laura Schenk, Jacob Zinn, Jay Meredith, Lizard Dunleavy, Elizabeth Charles. And with all that said, I just want to remind y'all, yes, the words, newsy credits, they're Steiderky Swen. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo. The community should protect...